The views and content expressed on the following program are provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. They do not constitute legal advice. A podcast is not a substitute for retaining a competent, licensed attorney to advise you on your specific legal situation.
Break the business, play is work and work is play. Power into creators, have fun along the way. Break the business, doing what it takes. Celebrate success and learn from the mistakes.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is time for Break the Business, where we empower indie creators and have some fun along the way. I'm Ryan Kairalla, and it is a pleasure to have you here this week. Boy, oh boy, do we have ourselves a fantastic program for you. Great topics, fantastic guests. We're going to be joined a little bit later by music manager Emily Cameron of global music management firm ATC Management. Super accomplished, has an amazing roster of artists, and I'm sure that's going to mean that she will have some fantastic insights to share with all of us. If you are interested in being informed as an independent creator, this is a great hour to listen to this week, folks. And our co-host this week is going to bring it too. I got to tell you, the positive vibes and just publicity and just feedback that we got, that's the word I'm looking for, from our guest 2 weeks ago, Gideon King, was loud, and it was clear that you all like you some Gideon King. You thought that he was insightful. You loved his music knowledge. You liked his business background. You liked how he brought all that together. And so, of course, we had to bring him back as a co-host. So joining us this week on the program is our co-host, Gideon King is back. Hey, Gideon.
Howdy. Thanks for having me.
Musician and private investor, entrepreneur, and guy who looks terrific in sunglasses, Gideon King, joining us. Frontman for Gideon King and City Blog, and just all-around knowledgeable dude in music and business. We are happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here, and thank you for the intro. I don't know how much of it is true, but thanks for the intro.
We try to keep it like 70, 80% true,
Man,
C+ student.
That's
better
that's better than politics.
That's right. If that was a free throw shooting percentage, that'd be,
Right,
not great.
totally.
But if it was a 3-point percentage, that'd, Hall of Fame level.
Right, I agree.
So since you're new to the co-hosting, I wanted to start things off by giving you a little show history. So Break the Business, we've been doing this in one incarnation or another since 2015. We've been around a bit. And there are certain segments that we used to do in the very early years, in the pre-Sirius XM years, in the pre-producer Lauren years, just going all the way back. And I figured, since you're new, since you probably want to learn more about the history of this program, I would dust off a classic Break the Business segment that we have not done in at least 2 presidents. It's been a while. And that is the Music Jerk of the Week segment. Let me see if I still have the imaging for this.
And now it's time for Ryan's Music Jerk of the Week
Oh, you are just the worst type of person.
on the Break the Business podcast.
Even my voice sounded more youthful back then. It was a different time. So yeah, we used to do something called the Music Jerk of the Week, where we would talk about different people or organizations that were just being jerks in the music industry. And in light of recent news, Gideon, I think that we have a new music jerk this week. And that music jerk is music concert goers. People going to music concerts lately have been jerks lately. And I'm not saying all of them have, but enough of them have that we have this big problem going on in live touring right now, where we used to have this one pandemic, this COVID pandemic, that was keeping us all away from concerts. And now that pandemic is starting to subside, and we're going back to concerts, which is great. But now we have a new pandemic that has swept through concerts, and it's this uncontrollable urge that music concert goers seem to have for throwing crap at musicians. This is a plague lately, Gideon King. Recently, it was reported that Harry Styles was hit in the eye on stage at a concert in Vienna. And this isn't the first time he's been hit with something. About 10 years ago, he got hit with a shoe at a concert. I think that was at a One Direction concert. Recently, Drake had a phone thrown at him. Bebe Rexha was once hit with a phone as well, and she collapsed on stage. At a recent show in Idaho, Kelsey Ballerini had an object thrown at her, and she had to stop her performance. Somebody threw their mother's ashes at pop star Pink recently at one of her shows.
It was a perfectly normal thing to do.
Oh, yeah. We've all done that once or
right.
twice.
That's why I go to concerts, to throw my nuclear family's ashes at the artists. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me.
And this is the one that might be worse. At a Lil Nas X show earlier this month in Sweden,
The sex toy, yeah.
a fan threw a sex toy. Yes, you know what's going on here. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, Gideon, as a touring musician, as somebody who's played many a live show, and just someone who I know is just sort of a student of the human condition. Why do you think this is happening lately? Why are so many artists getting crap thrown at them?
Okay, so I mean, this is the jerk segment of the week, so I want to be careful not to undermine the extent of the jerkdom. But here's what I will say. We gotta classify, as we classify trees and bugs and diseases and all kinds of things. We gotta classify this throwing thing, and we gotta put it in context. Let me start with the positives of fan interaction and artists throwing things at them. Let's be honest. There are times when people throw their phone on the stage, and Harry Styles or Pink or Emily King or whoever, they take it, they do a selfie, they go like this. The two people who threw the phone are in the selfie, and in the background we got the fans, and that is a kind of making love between the artist and the fans. So let's start from a good place and say that doesn't fall into the jerkdom category. And then we get this sort of second, I would say that's category one, which is, again, the making of love between the artist and the fans. Category two is sort of like awkward love, which results in potential injury. It's like, when a 7-year-old wants to make friends with another 7-year-old, he goes over and he hugs him too hard and knocks him over. And everybody says, well, he's just trying to make friends. So the fans want to connect with the artist. And in this kind of awkward, highly charged environment of a concert, they throw something, usually a phone, at the artist. Okay? So now we're sort of crossing over the threshold into jerkdom. And then there is the Little Cuddy concert that my son went to, where he paid $250 to see Kanye. Kanye didn't show up. What a shock!
Oh, this was in Miami.
Yeah. And then he shows up, and then Little Cuddy, or I don't know what his name
Kid
is,
Cudi.
whatever. Kid Cudi. So right, it's Lil Wayne. So Kid Cudi shows up, and he says, "Don't throw any more bottles at me." So of course, fans throw more bottles at him. And now we're getting into that level of like aggression and like almost it's almost actionable behavior in terms of like being a misdemeanor, rising to the level of aggravated assault in certain states. So I guess what I would say is concerts are this place of kinetic energy. There's all this motion. There's the physics of music pumping out of speakers. There's people moving around, buying, drinking. There's motion. And what emanates from motion is love, awkward love, and then jerkdom. And since we're in the jerkdom segment, what's going on is that people are trying to somehow express themselves or individuate in that ecosystem, and they do it stupidly. One guy of course said, this is all about social media and the immediacy of the moment and doing anything. So in the under the rubric of jerkdom, I would say that like social media is a bit of a catalyst for this, because people are taking, their phone. They know people are videoing it, and it's their moment. It's their 5 seconds of fame. So I think we're on a continuum here, and we're in the, we're discussing the jerkdom part, but this continuum that leads to jerkdom starts from a place of genuine fan and artist lovemaking, if you know what I'm saying.
I do.
You see where I'm coming from.
Has Gideon King and City Blog ever been on the receiving end of something getting chucked at them?
So if someone actually threw something at me that could like hurt me, and make this nose, even bigger than it already is, by virtue of injury, I would throw my guitar at them. Okay. But I have definitely, that would piss me off. Okay. But I have had a lot of fans who do these sort of, moral or energy equivalent of saying things. We played one show and there were some people saying some not very nice things about some of the female singers. And I have to say, when a fan undermines the flow and the good vibes, it is like, it's very hard to recover. You play and you're like sort of, it's almost like the equivalent of being musically tased. Okay. You feel like you've been tased. You sort of stop and you're like, wait, there's something so elemental about fans, listening, interaction, clapping. And then when that sort of, that presupposed, cooperation is violently disturbed, it was for me anyway, the few times it's happened, it's really hard to like come back. You get a weird nervous feeling for the rest of the show. I wouldn't say unsafe, but certainly unsettled. So it sucks. That's what I'm trying to say. It sucks.
It sucks, and I think it speaks to, and we've talked about this before in the context of like why you just shouldn't generally publicly be an a-hole to artists you don't like on social media.
Right.
Because performing, giving your life to artistry, putting your work up for people's evaluation is such an incredible act of courage on its own without anybody being just a jerk in some kind of way. That like, it's just generally just a crappy thing to do, just to be awful to musicians, even musicians you don't like. If you don't like, keep it to yourself. Right. Lauren, do you have the clip of music host Zane Lowe talking about this scourge of people throwing stuff at musicians? I really was blown away by his perspective on it. I think it captures a lot of what we're talking about here.
About, I don't know when it was, a couple of months back, I put a TikTok up after someone threw something at Harry Styles. I think it was like a piece of candy or whatever. And I was really pissed about it. People have been trying to get artists' attention from the crowd for a long, long time. As long as artists have been on stage, people want to get closer. They want to be the one that the artist looks at. I get it, right? It's all part of the fantasy of it. But in recent times, we're just seeing this insane amount of objects being thrown at people who are taking. It's courageous enough to be able to step on stage and sing those songs in front of people they don't know. Would you do it? I'm asking you listening right now, would you do it? I mean, if you don't have a guitar in your hand, or you're not sitting in front of a computer making music, or maybe you're at college right now and you just listen to this, getting ready to go and do your classes, and you're in the creative arts, I'm asking everybody else who buys a ticket to a show, would you do it? Would you go on stage with an instrument or just with your voice, and would you sing in front of 20, 30, 40,000 people? Probably not, right? Probably not. It takes courage, it takes real vulnerability, and it takes, what I would consider to be a superhero power to go out there and try to make our lives better by performing, right? We buy tickets because it makes our life better. It makes us feel less alone. We sing these songs, we take these memories, we share them. And I'm talking to the world right now. Like, really, if you're listening to this, don't switch off. Don't be like he's in rant mode. Really ask yourself, how many times have you told stories about your favorite shows to your friends? The first time you saw that band, or the first time you went to that festival, your greatest festival experience, or maybe you met your partner at a concert. How many great things come out of this experience? None of that, in that beautiful unofficial contract or trade between human beings, artists and fans, nothing, nowhere does it say throw shit. There's no intention. There's no good intention with doing that. There is none. You cannot justify it. I just wanted a selfie. No. I just want you to put on the bracelet. No. Just please actually think, why am I here? What am I here for? What do I want to get out of this? And if the answer is, I'm going to throw something to be the center of attention, don't go.
I mean, that just about nails it. Putting your work out there, to whether it's 40,000 fans or even just a couple dozen people at a club. And I often say, depending on your situation, sometimes like a couple dozen people at a club can be scarier than 40,000 people, because you're looking at them right in the eye, and you can like isolate each one, and like, to me, that's scarier. But whatever the situation, that's already hard enough. And when we think about the value that live music has, how it makes us feel, how happy, how you remember your favorite concert for the rest of your life, if we can't control ourselves as music fans, if we keep doing stupid crap like this, our favorite artists are going to stop touring because it's dangerous, and we're going to miss out on these experiences. And it breaks my heart.
But Ryan, one question for you.
Mm.
Doesn't every public get-together have to have rules of engagement. And what I mean by that is, if Harry Styles, if someone throws a huge pair of sunglasses, okay, on the stage or whatever, and Harry Styles puts it on and dances around with it, okay, which he does, okay. Well, I don't know because I haven't been to a Harry Styles concert, but I read that, okay. So maybe I read something wrong, but I assume it's right. The rules of engagement are blurred. Like, and listen, I'm 1,000,000,000% with you. Of course, people shouldn't be throwing things on stage that could be dangerous, that disturb the flow of the set. But if the artist, at some level, is accepting that kind of modality of behavior, at some level, it blurs the lines. And so the only point I'm making, I agree with that clip. I agree with everything you're saying. But at some level, the rules of engagement may have to be by the artist more clearly delineated, clearly set. As Adele said, I think she said, I effing dare you or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I read something, right? I effing dare you to do it. There are other people who say, just don't do it. I mean, when I went and saw Bono's one-man show where he, recently, they took your cell phones away. And so the rules of engagement, okay, were set. And that's the only point that I'm making to you, is that the lines can actually be, the victim can blur the lines, inviting the victimhood at some level. That's the only thing I'm saying.
But doesn't it suck that like Harry Styles even has to make, like, or Adele, as you put it, the fact that they even have to make that statement to people, hey, don't throw crap at me while I'm performing. I don't come to your job and throw crap at you. And like, I don't, Harry Styles, somebody throws a pair of sunglasses and he puts them on to look cool. I don't, I'm not going to like use that as a reason to victim blame him here, right? Like the fact that he went, somebody threw sunglasses on the stage, that sucks, but the show must go on. I'm going to show people that like I'm not going to let it bother me so that I can still put on a good show for my fans. I'm not going to like blame him for that and say, hey, you asked for somebody now throwing a cell phone at you,
Fair enough.
But it's Daniel Neruda writes in, just because it was okay once doesn't mean it's okay every time. Music fans, like we need to take the initiative here. Like, right, if an artist tells us don't do it, but we should be able to know not to do it to begin with. And so I would like to provide a little public service announcement. I wanted to put together a little PSA to remind music fans, don't throw crap at concerts. But I realized, I'm not the best writer in the world, and so I needed a little bit of help with the script. And so I turned to the AI Overlord to help me with this public service announcement for our AI Overlord Tip of the Week.
AI Overlord Tip of the Week. AI Overlord Tip of the Week. AI Overlord Tip of the Week. AI Overlord Tip of the Week.
For this week, I asked ChatGPT, our AI overlord, to help me with a little PSA, a public service announcement, to remind music fans of the proper way to act during concerts. So without further ado, here we go. Hi, I'm podcasting's Ryan Kairalla. In the world of music, there's nothing quite like a hit. Those sweet melodies, thundering bass lines, powerful lyrics that echo in our hearts. But in recent times, a different kind of hit has been making headlines. A hit that's less chart-topping and more artist-stopping. The pop heartthrob Harry Styles, once the receiver of endearing fan letters, now has to dodge endearing fan loafers launched at warp speed. And the ever-cool Drake, who once implored us to call him on his cell phone, probably didn't mean for us to throw said cell phone at his face mid-performance. Just last month, Bebe Rexha was rudely interrupted when a fan decided to throw a smartphone right at her face during her riveting performance. Bebe asked us to take her home, not take her out, folks. And let's not forget about our country darling, Kelsey Ballerini. She just wanted to croon about love and heartache, not dodge a fastball special from the crowd. And then there's Pink. No, we're not talking about her hair or her daring acrobatics. At one of her shows in London, a zealous fan decided to throw her mother's ashes at her. While we all know that Pink is absolutely fire, this isn't quite what we had in mind. And remember our friend Lil Nas X? Well, over in Sweden, he was serenaded by an adult toy flying through the air. It seems that some fans took his Montero lyrics a bit too literally. Folks, it seems we've reached a point where we need a reminder, a musical memo, if you will. Concerts are for clapping, not catapulting. They're for dancing, not discus throwing. And they're certainly for singing along, not slinging accessories. So here's a new trend for you. Tweet, Snap, TikTok, or whatever platform you're into. Hashtag Stop the Drop. Show your love, not your arm strength. Keep the hits on the charts, not on the artists. Remember, fans, hashtag Stop the Drop. Because we all know that the only things that should be hitting at concerts are the beats, the moves, and the high notes. This has been a public service announcement from the Association of Artists not wanting to be pelted by objects by stupid music fans. Thank you. Yeah. Gotta say, the AI overlord had some nice turns of phrase there. Credit where credit is due. I thought that a little bit of AP English fairy dust on that PSA.
That was actually pretty cool.
It's
pretty real.
Just out of curiosity, what are your thoughts about the AI revolution? I feel like as an investor, as an entrepreneur, you're following the trends. You're seeing what ChatGPT and AI is doing in business. What do you think of all this?
It is so seismic on so many levels. To be able to ask AI to write you a promo for a show, does that obviate the need for an employee? Is that terrifying? I have seen AI apps. I've been invited into some venture capital meetings recently where I'm not kidding. And I've signed Comfy, so I can't say anything. I'm obviously going to not mention names. I am not kidding when I tell you that you can sit down with certain AI apps and create things that are well-produced hit songs in 2 minutes. Produce an album in an hour and a half. It's blurring the lines between the creator and the consumer. In academia, kids they write papers. They write their English and philosophy papers. So I don't want to be like the Luddites or Luddites or however the hell you pronounce it correctly, who reject technology and run for the hills every time there's progress, meaningful progress. But I hate when we regulate things too much. But this may be the first time in my life, my multi-decade-long life, and I'm certainly not disclosing how old I am here. I'm 53. This may be the first freaking time that I actually think regulation, we need it, and we may need it badly. I mean, when Elon Musk sort of says, forget all these other risks we talk about, AI has the potential to turn against us in vicious ways. I see it. Plus, honestly, as a guy, I hate referring to myself as an artist. It's almost pretentious, but as a guy who creates creative content, to sit there in a meeting and see a song be churned out by a machine in 45 seconds is one of the most awful, sickening feelings. So Ryan, I don't know what the hell to make of it. I hope that just like as the internet gathered steam when people incorrectly prognosticated that it would kill jobs, I hope that people are incorrectly prognosticating that it will kill jobs this time like last time. But man, artwork. I just did a single. I'll finish my comments here. I've produced a couple new tunes lately. I stayed up till 2 a.m. I have my 5 AI apps. Man, I came up with some really cool artwork. I'll show you guys. I'll put up on the screen next time, whatever. It looks good. It's professional. And that means that there are some graphic artists who normally would do this for me might not get that work. So I'm personally deeply hoping that these IP lawsuits against these entities succeed in arguing that the image generators are amalgamating a series of things created by others. And in a sense, violating copyright law. I may not be using the right word, Ryan, but violating copyright laws. I actually hope that some of that litigation has a moderating effect on the explosion of all this. Man, I don't know what to say. It terrifies the living hell out of me. I don't. That's not much of an answer, but it just terrifies the hell out of me.
There's a lot that you said that was shocking there. I think top on the list of all the things that you said was the fact that you're 53. Producer Lauren's jaw dropped.
And now you're literally highlighting my age. You know, this is ageism. I don't feel safe. I want to talk to personnel. I want to talk to the producer.
I mean, you're absolutely welcome to file an HR complaint, but you do need to give me your moisturizer routine. That's
you know what? This. I did not think this would be this hard on me, but clearly it is. It's fine. Listen, I should have kept my mouth shut.
No, in all seriousness, though, we love.
I'm now 53. I'm 5.3 decades old. Okay, let's be very careful about how we say this.
I like that.
Yeah.
Level 53. It's your experience points are getting higher and higher.
Right.
But in all seriousness, we love hearing your perspective on a lot of different topics, and that was probably the number one thing I was most excited about when knowing we were going to have you as a co-host. Is I knew I could ask you about like a wide range of things and you'd have some cool perspective drawing on your work as an investor in business or in your work as a musician and as a creative professional. There's a lot we could get you to weigh in on. And so in preparation for your co-hosting gig, Gideon, we had asked you, hey, and I do this with all the co-hosts, by the way. I say, send me a couple topics that you might want to talk about during the show that we can go to you on. And normally the co-host will dutifully send one or two things. Oh, something that's going on in the news, or this is something I like talking about. This is my go-to thing that if I have to talk about something at a cocktail party, this is what I talk about. Gideon King, viewers and listeners, just sent me dozens of topics, just littering my inbox with all these really amazing, thought-provoking topics across business and music and philosophy. And I had no way of sifting through all of this to figure out, okay, what thing do we want to talk to Gideon about? Because any one of these things would be excellent topics. So what I've done is I took some of Gideon's suggestions that he emailed me and we put them on, the viewers here can see, the Wheel of Gideon King topics.
All right, here we go.
And so what we're going to do before we go to break here real quick and then talk to our guest, Emily Cameron, is we're going to spin the wheel of Gideon King topics. And whatever it lands on, we're going to have you talk about that thing. And then when we bring you on again for subsequent shows, we can spin the wheel again, add more topics to it. So we're going to let the wheel decide what part of your expertise we want to draw from. All right, here we go. Let's spin the wheel.
Wow, this actually works. Look at this.
And the wheel landed on technology. How should we use technology in the studio? What does sounding real mean anymore? The funny thing is that modern sonic tools sound dated much more quickly than mere traditional instrumentation. Boy, how prescient was that topic that you just that the wheel just gave us in light of everything that you just said about AI? I mean, what does technology mean to you in the studio experience, Gideon? Are you sort of like an old school musician? Like when Gideon King and City Blog go into the studio, are you recording real instruments or are you using a lot of technology?
Man, Ryan, we use it all. I am a massive fan of exploring, trying to use every toy, every brand new toy. Pounding the studio table and saying real instruments are the only way and real strings, that's just nonsense. Okay. The only comment that I would make is that if you listen to Stevie Wonder or the Talking Heads, man, even some of Calvin Harris's stuff from a few years ago, U2, the stuff that emanates from the toys, I'll give you an example. Ivory software or Pigments. These are software programs you use in the studio. Man, they give you an unbelievable palette of sonic tools. The only frightening thing about those things is when you write a song, you want it to be lasting, right? Everybody says, what do you want? You want to write a song that's timeless. Who the hell doesn't say that, right? But I'm finding that the toys, they get supplanted by other toys and therefore almost de facto become dated. When new toys come around and supplant the old toys. At some sort of intrinsic level, the old toys are by definition dated because of their supplantation. I don't know if there's such a word as supplantation, but because they've been supplanted, okay? And yet, amazingly, piano, strings, an upright bass, even a good electric bass, those things last through time. And my only sort of, I wouldn't say advice, but my only sort of cautionary thinking on this is that be careful how hip you want to be in using the new tools from Ableton and Pigments and Ivory and Arturia and all the shit I have in my studio, which I use all the time. So I'm by the way a hypocrite as I say this, but like, but be careful, because you may wake up like literally 3 years later and be like, oh my God, that's like unbelievably dated already what I wrote. And so what I'm trying to do is somehow squeeze those technological devices into creating things that are so unique and almost anomalous and unidentifiable that they don't just become dated. The best Stevie Wonder songs, let's be honest, sound a little dated because he was using the Wurlitzer and he was using the the Rhodes, and you're almost like you love Stevie, but you're thinking like, boy, that does sound a little dated. And those were the toys, just as these are the toys. So I struggle with it. We just did a song the other day, man, I'll send it to you guys, which is all toys. So maybe it's going to be dated in 15 minutes. I have no idea. But my point is, we should wrestle with this when we write music, because there is actually nothing dated about Beethoven. And there is actually nothing dated about John Coltrane. But there is about those toys and some Stevie songs. Just something, I don't have any answers. I'm just highlighting the tension. That's all.
I'm with you on it. The tension is there, and I'm torn on it. I generally tend to subscribe to the view that I want artists to have as many toys as possible. The more things you give artists to create with, the cooler the stuff that they create. And it's and we just want to have them have more stuff. But I do, and God, I'm going to sound so old and crusty when I say this, but I do lament some of what we've lost in some recordings that even came out before I was born, that the experience that was created in that recording can never happen again because of the way we make music now. I mean, my favorite master recording, that's the favorite composition that's ever been fixed onto a recording, is Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones.
Oh, hell yeah.
And not because it was perfectly recorded, right? It's the sound is raw and it's grungy, and the instruments aren't perfectly in tune, and they don't nail every note, but there's certain bits of humanity in there that technology would have taken away. Like when and God, her name's escaping me, but the woman who sang with Mick Jagger on that song, maybe Lauren can look it up.
Oh yeah.
There's one part in that song after like toward the bridge where she's just singing her ass off, hitting, and at one point she hits this really loud screaming note, and you just hear Mick Jagger way off on the mic just go, whoa. It wasn't meant to be recorded, but it's amazing. And if that was done in a modern studio, that would have never happened, right? They would have taken out the Mick Jagger whoa, and that's sad.
And what you're in search of, in my opinion, based upon what you just said, is you're trying to get humanity out of the expression. And when you go into what that humanity that you're hearing is the air between the instrument and the mic. It's analog, it's tape, and now when you go right into the box using an expression and everything is DI, direct in, and there's no air, the question is there just sort of this fading level of humanity in what we're producing? It's quantized, for example. Right? Stuff is quantized. You play it to a click track. And so, man, this is a tough problem. The one thing is, you don't want to just reject stuff, because the truth is, when my son and his friends go hear a concert, okay, which is surprising that I have a son who's 22 because I'm only 33 years old. But when, 33.
Babies having babies.
Exactly. Good point. And so when he goes, man, he's seeing someone up there with a laptop, okay? And so I can't reject that. So I'm not going to reject the toys, but there's that sucking sound you hear is often the humanity going out of modern production. And so I don't know, man, maybe we're old, maybe we're old.
love to get our guest's perspective on this in the next segment as somebody who works for the management company that manages a lot of not only new modern artists, but a lot of the classic artists that, we might associate with traditional recording, like a Nick Cave, for example.
Yeah, totally.
Emily Cameron's probably got a lot to say on this. We're going to find out after the break. Don't go anywhere. We're back in 2 here on Break the Business. Ryan Kairalla here. I hope you're enjoying the show, and I hope that you're getting a lot out of it. I do what I do because I care about creators like you. A lot. I've dedicated my career to helping creative professionals, entrepreneurs, and organizations move forward. I do it by hosting this program, and I'm also proud to do it in my legal practice. If you're a creative professional looking for solutions-oriented legal services to help you further your goals, I'd love to help. My firm RKPA does contracts, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Visit rkpalaw.com to learn more. That's rkpalaw.com. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida.
Streaming services for Break the Business provided by LEK Entertainment. LEK Entertainment is a full-service entertainment company offering everything from consultations to full-scale events and productions, including audio and video productions, voiceovers, staged theatrical productions, script and music development, and streaming services. For more information, visit lekentertainment.com. LEK Entertainment wants to help you bring your story to life.
Thanks for supporting Break the Business. If you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com. You can follow the host, that's me, on Twitter at Ryan Kair, and you can follow the show at the BTB Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, and on all major podcast platforms. And now, let's get back to the show.
I am loving the positive feedback we're getting on the Gideon King Wheel of Topics. We'll definitely have to do that again. Ryan Kairalla here with co-host Gideon King here on Break the Business. Thank you for checking us out wherever you're checking us out, whether it's on podcast platforms, streaming platforms, or Sirius XM 145, much love to Slam Radio. Wherever you are taking in this program, we are just glad that you are. All right, Gideon, let's go ahead and bring out our guest this week. She is a music manager and a partner at ATC, a global management firm whose artist roster includes Haley Kiyoko, Nick Cave, Dakota, and The Hives. You can check out our guest's work on Instagram and Twitter by following at ATC Management. We are happy to welcome Emily Cameron on to Break the Business. Hi, Emily.
Hi, how are you?
We are so happy to be here with you. We are doing great. We're having a blast talking about a lot of kind of interesting topics in music that is going on right now that I'm sure you might have some perspective on. First, everybody's throwing crap at artists at concerts. I don't know. We don't know why this is happening. Like Harry Styles got hit. Pink got hit with her mother's ashes. Is this something that any of your clients are concerned with right now? Like, why do you think this is happening so much lately?
I think actually quite a lot of people are, because it seems to be becoming a little bit of a trend, slightly worryingly. Luckily, it's not anything that's happened to any of my clients, but they definitely, I think everyone has a story about something wild that's happened to them on stage, whether it's been someone grabbing them or saying certain things to them. I know there was, Ice Spice isn't a client of mine, but I recently saw a viral video of someone making a lot of inappropriate comments to her as she was up on stage. I think that happens quite a lot too. So yeah, luckily we haven't come across that yet, but I'm sure we will at some point in the future.
Well, I want to talk to you to start things off about how you got started in the industry, because your origin story, getting into the biz, is kind of an interesting one. It's not what I've heard before, that you basically got your first big gig in the music industry because of martial arts. Can you tell us about this?
Yes. So, well, I'd always wanted to be in music ever since I was a child before I could talk. I think I was singing, and I was kind of like frantically applying for positions. And you're no more than just a face on a screen to most of these people. And I didn't have any family in the business, and at the same time, I was also teaching kickboxing and boxing, and I was teaching in the gym right next door to Sony Music Publishing, which I had no idea about because I knew a lot about music growing up and I went to a music school, but we were taught how to put on a show, but not necessarily what a publisher does, what a music producer does, or anything like that. So I was in the gym one day. It was kind of like they had a professional kind of boxing ring, and there was sparring there. And Guy Moot, who is now CEO of Warner Chappell Music Publishing, was running Sony Music Publishing at the time. And I'd said to someone in the gym, gosh, I'm having a really hard time. I'm desperately applying for these internships and just don't seem to get anything back. How can I get my foot in the door? And he said, hang on a minute. He said, I think one of the guys who trains here is one of the guys who runs Sony Music Publishing. Do you want me to put you in contact? So obviously I was like, yes, absolutely. So it also turned out, that Guy is, basically a black belt and very, very into martial arts. So not only did we bond over that, but that was actually what got my my foot in the door, because that was, I guess, what made me more than just a name on a screen with a CV like everyone else. So so we kind of mutually bonded over that, and that's what got me in.
I've always heard stories about people finding jobs not because of what college they went to or what's on their resume, but because they have some hobby or some interest that messes with the person that is potentially offering them an opportunity. I've heard it in the martial arts space, or maybe you're both into pickleball or video games or something like that. And so I think that's the argument for, as a creative professional or any kind of professional, to have interests outside of the industry that you're trying to get into, because you never know when one of those hobbies, whenever one of those extracurricular activities might mesh with somebody who could be giving you an opportunity, and you could kickbox your way into the music business, which I just love the idea of this. Gideon is this something that you've ever come across either in the music or in the business side, like having some kind of outside interest that helped create an opportunity for you?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not only create an opportunity for me. Music, of course, being a jazz guitar player was what got me an interview. I was clearly unqualified to do what I got an interview to do, but because I said I played jazz guitar, the guy was a jazz head, and so he invited me in. We talked about jazz. Also, when I hire people, I mean, to be honest, I really hire people based upon their hobbies and what they're good at, much more than where they went to school and what their GPA is. So the finding common ground and people's personal habits. Like, for example, if you do martial arts, there's a certain level of discipline associated with that. Like, it's just a fact that you have chosen to do something that is imbued with a level of discipline. It means there's something about you that's going to get shit done. And so, that alone, personal habits, very important.
Totally. And I think also it's, when you connect with, whether it's an artist, a producer in a studio setting, I mean, often you're thrown into these kind of really intimate situations with people in a very short space of time. And I think, as I'm sure I mean, going into a session with someone, joining a session with someone that you've never met before, it's kind of like going on a blind date naked. I mean, you're very exposed. Everyone's kind of got all this like raw feeling and raw emotion out there. And I think anything that you have that you can kind of bond with someone over, that kind of provides you with like a mutual understanding of one another, why you got into it, how you got into it, anything like that is super important.
Emily, you've spoken a lot on the subject of artist compensation. You're definitely what we would call an artist rights advocate, which means you have a place in our hearts here at Break the Business. And you've talked a lot about, the disparities that seem to exist in compensation for creative professionals and the need for perhaps policies that can address that. Can you give us some examples of where you're seeing that compensation disparity most starkly? We've talked in the past and a few weeks ago about how songwriters, for example, might not be seeing the compensation that they could potentially get in a different policy landscape. But where are you seeing this disparity most prevalent?
I mean, I think, it's always easy to point, immediately to the streaming giants, and don't get me wrong, they're not the heroes here by any means. But I mean, I think the biggest issue is with the labels. I mean, I think right now it's also the way that the money is spread out, right? I mean, I literally, right before we got on, have been, dealing with, a deal where they're refusing to give the writer who contributed a huge amount to the record any fee or any point, particularly for songwriters, because with producers, at the very least, you are getting a couple of master points. You're usually getting a fee. You're getting something up front. As a songwriter, I mean, streaming is bringing in nothing, and streaming giants make a huge amount of money. Anytime a song goes into dispute, for example, and there's a split discrepancy, no one gets paid out. If the artist doesn't sign, and every single artist doesn't sign a letter of direction, no one gets paid out. I mean, there's a lot of ways that or tricks rather, that labels have to make it really, really difficult to get paid. And I think there's also just such a discrepancy in where the money is spread out. For example, I know there's a major label who just spent $300,000 on a song that's done absolutely nothing because it went viral on TikTok. But yet they absolutely could never in a million years justify giving $1,000 to a struggling songwriter who can't pay their rent. There's been other situations I remember having with an artist on a major label, where we couldn't get any fee for the writers approved, but they then spent over $1 million on the music video. So there's a huge imbalance somewhere, and it's not that they can't, it's that they don't want to. Because they've actually never been making more money than they are right now, and it benefits them hugely to basically just say no, because they have the power to do so. And a lot of the times, writers and artists and producers, or not so much artists rather, because the artists are obviously getting a bigger piece of the pie and they're seeing money elsewhere. They're seeing money in branding and merch and ticket sales. Writers and producers aren't seeing any of that, So, really any fee is something, and it's a standard that I think a lot of managers are trying to set. But my God, the pushback is real. I don't think I've ever, asked for a fee for a writer, or even 1 point for a writer that's ever not had pushback.
Wow.
So it's hard for sure.
It's the history. It's like bad deals make bad history. And those early days when Spotify agreed, and of course they couldn't project in the future. I'm not even disparaging Spotify, but when they agreed to give that big a piece to the labels for non-independent artists was the day that wasn't a day, it was a series of deals over time, but was the day that the entire artist economy was subverted, perverted, whatever the right word is. And we are, Emily, I'm an investor, and my partners and I own something called AudioMac, which is one of the biggest hip hop streaming.
Yes.
So you know AudioMac, right? So that's we're mostly independent, or largely independent artists, but we also have content that we pay for. And this has given me a glimpse into how those deals and the amount of money that the labels are still getting from the big pipes like Spotify, Deezer, you name the DSP. This is what's the expression? The elephant in the room? Right. This is the elephant in the room economically, and it is choking off oxygen to artists and actually a whole community and ecosystem. But I don't want to hijack answers to your questions. I'm just adding this on as a corollary to what you guys are doing, because in building AudioMac, It is once a week that I get on the phone with the CEO and we bang our heads against the wall about this problem. And we have not figured it out and we have not conquered it.
I just don't see an industry from where I'm sitting as an entertainment lawyer. For the lion's share of musicians, I don't see an industry where there's enough money to be made for the streaming service, a label, and the recording artist and the songwriters to all make a decent living on the vast majority of music that gets produced, especially when you look at the way that a lot of record deals are structured. Emily, as you were kind of talking about your experiences with getting artists paid, I was just having flashbacks to some of my more nightmarish record label negotiations where you'll get a record deal that says that the artist is going to get like a 15% royalty or a 17% royalty, which is the same kind of similar percentage to what they would have gotten like 30 years ago when music was sold as CDs. Except, why is the artist only getting the same 17% royalty? There's no manufacturing cost to the label. There's a lot more money being made. You don't need to only give the artist 15%. It could be something more like 50-50. But labels will do that just because they have the market power. And so when you think about what 15% means to an artist, Spotify is paying something like 6/10 of a cent per stream or 5/10 of a cent per stream.
Yeah, I wish.
Then you have to say 15% of 5/10 of a cent per stream. How many streams does an artist get to need to repay, say, a $50,000 advance or $50,000 in recording costs? And the answer is they will never recoup that because you're talking about fractions of a cent because the record label is coming in and taking your fun-sized Spotify royalty and making it microscopic. And like, if the label is involved, there's just not enough money for everybody to make.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I think it's the way it's shared it's still really outdated. I mean, I think that tech is kind of like somewhere over here and then music is like over here, just struggling to catch up, but it's also very convenient for the labels to not be up to date on, all the latest technology. I mean, for example, there's, I think obviously a big movement now, to move to independent streaming companies. I mean, you have companies like STEM, for example, who, they did Brent Faiyaz's album that did amazingly last year. They did Giveon. They have Frank Ocean, I think that is definitely a move. And, for an artist that I work on, we've had a number of major label interests, and yet we've decided to still stick to the independent route because we know that going into a major label, we're going to get a far better deal and be able to go in and get that 50-50 split, get that, that power and that creative control as well, only once she's been developed, because labels aren't really doing artist development in the same way anymore. I think artist development now falls on a manager, and you have to wait until you have the social media following, the TikTok following, you know what I mean? I mean, all of those things. You basically have to take yourself viral before anyone else in a label will commit to giving you a fair deal.
Gosh, that is one of my least favorite developments that we've seen in the modern music industry. Just the destruction of what we used to call in the old days A&R, right? The A&R department. The idea that or artist development, or like that labels would actually send people into clubs looking for the next big artist and then would sign that artist to a demo deal and actually work with that artist and build them up into something. Like, that's done, right? You don't even, and you know this like from your work, Emily, like your client isn't even going to get signed to the label unless they're a turnkey property, unless they already have the social media following, unless they already have the music done, and then the label's just going to come and like use your finished product. And then once you get signed to the label's not going to push on a record until it goes viral on TikTok. They're going to tell that artist, oh, go make your song viral on TikTok, and then we'll put it out there. Then we'll push it. And, we all know from the way that the TikTok algorithm works is that none of us know how the TikTok algorithm works. And we don't, going viral is a crapshoot. And so there are, I mean, I see one of these once a week, I feel like, of an artist who will just say on TikTok, please make my song go viral, fans, or my label's never going to release this record. Like, that's what we're giving a label 87 cents on the dollar for, to have the artist and the manager do all the work.
Yep, 100%, 100%, and it also it doesn't actually, the TikTok thing. It's what's confusing to me is that it doesn't actually really translate to anything, in terms of what the song does and how much money the song makes. You know what I mean? I mean, yes, it can go viral on TikTok. That doesn't mean anything for the writers and producers, but I mean, they're not getting paid for any of that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please finish. I actually have a question for you, but please finish. Notice how polite I'm being.
Yeah, no, I mean,
given Emily's martial arts background, notice how polite I'm being.
Smart, yeah.
Like, I'm downright obsequious at this point.
Yeah, self-preservation. I can admire that.
I don't want to be hurt.
No, it definitely. I'd say that the way it comes in handy most is remaining calm, because I think you're often put in positions where it's kind of it's almost like a thug-like mafia mentality of, all right, we're going to bully you and use all our power until you kind of like give in, and I think it's remaining calm in those situations. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense. And I think, for an artist, it's also, like you said, who dictates the algorithm? A bunch of 12-year-olds. Those are the tastemakers of today, and I think that it's a real shame.
Yeah, see, 30 years ago, terrestrial radio decided who was a hit. Now it's Charlie D'Amelio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And we've all heard her album. Oh no, Dixie had the album actually.
Dixie had, of course. You gotta know your D'Amelios. Come on, Gideon, you had a question.
So, I mean, I have a couple lines of questions. I guess I'll fire them off really quickly. Sync. I said to Ryan previously, I said, a good friend of mine who's a world famous producer, actually his name's David Kahn, and he produced, Paul McCartney and James Brown and the Bengals and MTV Unplugged. And he's just a really smart, insightful, thoughtful guy. He'd be a wonderful guy to have on this show, come to think of it. And he said to me, sync is the new radio. And I wonder, as a manager with ever expanding duties, because, music managers now, it's social media. I mean, they have to manage all kinds of stuff that they didn't have to manage exactly 10 years ago. I wonder, a lot of my friends say, well, sync is just a mafia. There's a few music supervisors that really matter if you want to make any money and so on. And obviously I run a band and I have some sync experience myself. To what extent do you view it as your job as a manager of artists, if that's the right word to describe what you do, to get them sync? And to what extent do you agree with this idea that sync is the new radio? And just, as someone doing your job, how does sync figure into, what you're thinking about when you wake up in the morning?
It's hugely important. I mean, I think it's still different than radio. I think, depending on the sync, it has more power than radio. It's also something that is an amazing income source if you're not published. I mean, if you're not published, you're getting all those fees directly, of course. So, for my independent artist, sync is huge. We work with, I've worked with a couple of outside sync companies, and, they can really bring in great money and great opportunities because, way more people are hearing your music, I mean, but it depends on how big that sync is. I mean, obviously the goal is you want to get a Super Bowl commercial, you want to get a McDonald's sync, you want to get, I mean, I've got a song, burger related song coming out next month for one of my artists. So I sent it to the sync company. I said, right, let's get this to McDonald's, but let's get it to Burger King. She's not published, so all of those fees she's getting directly. I mean, it's huge. It can obviously get your music out there to different audiences that may not have heard your music before. I mean, I think each artist, where I have one artist from Minnesota, so she has a really big following in Minnesota and in her hometown, but a sync is gonna get someone, maybe in Norway to hear the song, so it's definitely really, really important. I think it becomes, when you sign a publishing deal, you obviously relinquish those rights and those fees. It's helping you recoup your deal for sure. So it is helpful, but once you sign a publishing deal, most of the time the publisher is seeing the majority of that money. There is one publisher that doesn't. Disney Music Publishing is the only, unless there's another one that I'm not aware of, but Disney Music Publishing is a company that I have a client signed to and I'm a big fan of, for the reason that, they allow work for hire, so you get all your things.
Wow.
Which is, pretty unique and special. And for the writers that, am I pushing for them all to get points and fees on every release? Absolutely. Do we get points and fees on every release? Absolutely not. So, every little helps. They've got families, you know what I mean? And yes, your publishing advance is, is something, but what a lot of people forget is that publishing advance, no matter how high you get it, that's got to last you an entire year. It's got to pay your rent. It's got to pay your studio rent, your studio equipment, your day-to-day, and these things aren't cheap, and I think that a lot of the time there's pressure put on people, or on artists and writers and producers, I'll just do it for the opportunity because it'll open more doors. And yes, in some cases that works, but at the same time you shouldn't have to work for free in order for that to be the case, to get an opportunity.
Our guest is Emily Cameron. She is a music manager and partner at ATC Management. Find out more about our guest's work by following them on Instagram and Twitter at ATC Management. Emily, this has been a blast. I feel like we have found a kindred spirit in you as an artist advocate and as somebody who shares our healthy skepticism of the record label model. You'll always have a fandom here at Break the Business. Before we let you go, Emily, we got one last question for you. Do you have any last tips for the indie creators out there to help them move their careers forward?
I would say, any last tips? I think keep pushing, never give up. I think that, it takes a really, really long time. As they say, every overnight success is 10 years in the making. So, no matter how much you see or people tell you, oh, it's your TikTok and, oh, you've got to do this, never compromise your integrity. If it doesn't feel right, or if it feels too good to be true, it probably is. Don't go for quick cash grabs because it can hurt your career later down the line. I mean, I think that, we're in a difficult climate for independent artists, but, bigger picture is always really important. I promise if you say no to something that doesn't seem right, something much better will come along 2 weeks later. I've just had this happen with an artist. We got offered something that seemed too good to be true, but it was something that really would have affected her long-term career and kind of slightly derailed the plan we had for her artist project. So we turned it down, as hard as it was, for the money. And 2 weeks later, something amazing came along. So, I would say the most important thing is keep going and fight. Don't let labels or anyone, anyone in a publisher or a label belittle you. I think your art is important, and it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Our thanks to Emily Cameron. Our thanks to our very youthful-looking co-host, Gideon King. Find out more about his band by visiting GideonKingCityBlog.com. Thanks to producer Lauren. And, of course, our hearty thanks to all of our viewers and listeners. Thank you so much for checking out Break the Business. We'll see you next week.